Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello and welcome, my friends. So happy to be here with you today. I think I'm just really happy in general today. The sun is shining. It's finally warm. Birds are singing. The snow that's still on the ground is melting away, and I'm just feeling cheerful. Before I dive into our super fun topic that I'm excited to share with you today, I do want to remind you that if you've been enjoying or getting anything out of this podcast, I would love it if you would leave a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts. That's the old iTunes. All you have to do that is go over to Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen on your computer or on your iPhone or smartphone, and simply scroll down to the place where it says ratings and review, and right below the first review that you see, you should see a write a review tab, and you just click on that. And I think you also want to, above that first review that you see, there's a little place that says tap to rate, so you do both of those things. When you do this, it's amazing to me just to know that you're out there, you're listening, you're getting something from it. And it also helps the podcast reach more people. It's the way Apple works. It helps it circulate more. So it's amazing to get a way to effectively get it into other people's hands who could really use this resource. And it's another way you can support the world in becoming a better place. So thank you ahead of time for those of you who are going to do that. All right. All of that said, let's dive in. Today, I want to share with you the 3 phases that we go through in our relationships to get to a mature love that really lasts in our marriages. Because often we don't actually understand or recognize the phase that we are in, and that it's a normal phase to be in, and what we can do to move our relationship, if we don't like the phase that we're in, right, into that place that is most deeply, unwaveringly loving. And that really is truly lasting, right? Really, this is the place most of us really do eventually want to get to. But there is some phases to move through to get there. So I'm going to give you those 3 phases and then describe each one in a little bit more depth and share how to really think about the phases in a way that ultimately gets you to that real goal most of us have in our marriages, right? That place where we have a vibrant, deep, genuine, lasting love. So the first phase that, again, I'm just going to mention these briefly and then we're going to go back through them. But the first phase that most of us fall into right away when we find a person we really are into is what I call infatuation. The second phase is disenchantment. And this can be many years later. It doesn't happen. This doesn't all happen very fast. The timeline on these can be very, very different for different couples. And then the third phase is that mature love that I'm talking about, or what I'm having fun calling real enchantment. All right, we move from infatuation to disenchantment to real enchantment, and I'll get more into that in a few minutes. So let's talk a little bit more about the second phase first, actually. Okay, so disenchantment, because that is where many of you are. Now, certainly not all of you, but many people find themselves in this phase somewhat quickly or after a few years, within the first few years of a relationship, Or oftentimes, you'll hear about it as like the 7-year itch, right? So very often it's by like year 7 that if you haven't gotten there already, you're getting to this land of disenchantment. And, disenchantment can look kind of different for different people, but basically your experience of it might be, you might feel sort of bored in your relationship, or you might feel like you're struggling in it. Certainly in this phase, there's a flaw focus, right? That flaw site that I talk about, where we start to see what's wrong and missing about our relationship, about our partner. We might even see our own shortcomings. And in this place, there can be kind of a longing for the earlier days, a wish that it was like it used to be, or maybe even some thoughts about leaving or questioning whether you married the right person. Certainly there can be sort of a sense of resignation to like, well, I guess this is life, like to sort of tolerating an unhappy marriage, or never feeling like a resignation to not feeling happy and satisfied. So those might be some of the things that can come up in this disenchantment period. And this is also where, fights can be much more common, and power struggles and annoyance and resentment and distance and all the things that we don't love in our marriages. This is that phase, right? When that's that's a bigger experience than the love and the goodness between you. This is disenchantment. It may, like, it's to put it really simply, it may be when you think of your relationship or you think of your partner, there's the first kind of emotion that you have is one that's more negative or dull. This is disenchantment. I oftentimes hear from people who are wanting a better marriage, right? That they aren't feeling all the good feelings, all the wonderful feelings, and their partner isn't showing up in those same wonderful ways that he was in the beginning of the relationship. And, that they oftentimes come to me from this place of this general sense of disenchantment, right? And what I oftentimes hear is that, I oftentimes hear from folks in this space that they want to go back to having what they used to have with their partner in the earlier days, right? That juiciness, that excitement, that joy, that deep attention to one another's like positive attributes, right? That blindness to flaws, and really that like super focus on each other, right? Like that feeling that he's like this miracle man, kind of, right? Kind of feel, and like he can do no wrong. And I know you remember that, like when he was on your mind a ton and it was just exciting and you both wanted to spend so much time together, and you talked about all the things and you did all the interesting things together, right? Like so many of us kind of have this like fantasy of being able to go back to that place. But that early day longing, right? When we're in that, what we're saying is we want to go back to the phase of infatuation. And I actually really don't want that for you. That's the wrong phase to want to go to, and I'm going to explain why. Infatuation is lovely, right? Don't get me wrong. It's lovely and fun. And it takes so much energy. I don't know about you, but I remember like I got a lot of energy from it in the beginning, but to hold that and maintain that for years, it's a lot on our nervous systems. And during those times when we're in that infatuation space, which I will explain a little bit more in a minute, it really excludes so much. It makes us kind of exclude so much of the rest of what makes life amazing. Right? We actually might forget about self-care. We might forget about our friends to some degree, right? Oftentimes this early period in relationships has such focus on each other, on the other person, that we kind of drop other parts of ourselves. And in some ways we even forget who we are. I've heard women say that a lot. Like we forget the things we love, the people that make our lives rich. And I want to say again, like if you're in the infatuation phase, soak it up. It's fun, right? And that this isn't bad to be in this phase. It's a normal part of falling in love, all of these things that I just mentioned, right? And deepening a romantic relationship. And it's truly a beautiful part of life, but it's also just not sustainable. And in large part, this is because it's not real with a capital R. It's not real. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. First, I'm going to share an Eckhart Tolle quote. I don't use his languaging, but so you're going to hear some language that I don't usually use, but I really appreciated it when I saw this quote of his because it speaks to very much what I'm talking about here. So he said, what is commonly called falling in love is in most cases an intensification of egoic wanting and needing. You become addicted to another person, or rather, your image of that person. It has nothing to do with true love, which contains no wanting whatsoever. So I see this all the time that like in this infatuation phase, what's happened is we don't really see the other person fully. We mostly see only the good. And this, I recently put out an episode on the confirmation bias. This is partly because of the confirmation bias. We're like, oh, he's such a great person. And then all we see is the great, right? And part of this is because of our hormones. In the beginning, like there is this biochemical thing that's going on that really helps us put on the like love glasses, right? And see all the good things. And another piece is the very normal projections that we as humans have, meaning we see what we hope for. We project our ideas of who we want our partner to be, like an ideal partner, onto this real person, this real man that we've met, onto our lover, right? And so we don't actually see like all of him. We only see the parts we choose to see. The good parts. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit. This is I'm sort of magnifying it so you can understand clearly. And the other piece here, one of the other reasons we also see so much of the good is because he is on his best behavior in those early days. Yeah, just like you are, right? Remember back. Remember how much you cared. Remember how much time you took getting ready to see him. Remember how, all the effort and energy you put into showing up at your best. He's doing the same in those early days, right? And what happens here, although that's beautiful, and I actually encourage people to do more of that in the later phases, right? That's part of getting through the disenchantment phase. But what happens in those early phases is when we're only on our best behavior, we're like, if he's doing that, we can't fully see him. We can't see his flawed side because he's not showing it to us. Yeah. I know a lot of you are like, yep. And it's vice versa too, right? And with these things going on all at once, really what happens is we're just unable to see our new partner's really full humanness. And so we are not stretched to love what isn't easy to love, right? Just easy. Love feels easy and effortless because we just see all the good stuff. It's easy to love him because we're loving the idea we have about him, not the whole real human that he is, right? And therefore, this is not real human love. Totally fun in both directions, right? Because this is happening for both partners in the relationship. So fun, so joyful, so romantic, so passionate. Yes, but not sustainable, deep love that encompasses who you really are as humans. And, this can't last because those hormones fade. And because you have a human brain and nervous system, that negativity bias that we talked about recently, that kicks in. And we can't hold up the charade of presenting only our best self for years, right? Life happens. Babies are born, pandemics come on in, like work stress happens, we get sick, like all the normal human things that happen in human lives, right? So inevitably our very human and more difficult aspects come out. Can you hear my thunder cat running around the house? She's like a wild child. It springs in the air and she's all on fire. She's little, but she's loud. So our difficult aspects come out eventually, inevitably. And what so often happens here is we begin that descent into disenchantment. I remember clearly my husband, when we were first together, he presented himself as like super tidy, as really into spirituality and healing arts. Like he was into Qigong and like he had all these big dreams about making like a loving contribution to the healing of the planet. And all these amazing things. And I'm sure I totally had my blinders on, right? As we all do. So I saw only the amazing things about him. And it's funny to think back because like there were so many like clues that this wasn't all to him, right? But I just overlooked them, right? And that's what we do. We overlook those things. And then, later on, I learned, he told me he actually like made a new bed frame like the day before I first came to his house, right? Because he didn't have a bed frame at all, right? And he deep cleaned his house. And, so he polished things up and like presented this lovely, like mature man who like kept his house beautifully. Right. Right. And then I learned later, like he'd done Qigong a little bit, but hadn't done all these other, like he really wasn't as into healing arts and spirituality as he presented himself. Right. He'd never done yoga or anything like that, I was a yoga teacher. And the truth was like he loved talking about making a difference in the world, but he didn't actually take much action around it, right? And I'm sure I totally did the same. Like I know I was like acting more adventurous than I really am. And I actually kind of felt more adventurous than I really am normally. Like I remember going out dancing a lot with him and doing things I just didn't normally really do. And now like, you'll never catch me out of bed at 10, like very rarely. Right. So, and some of these bigger like outdoor adventures that I used to do with him, like that's not really my jam. Certain ones I like, but in any case, right? Like I presented, and even was more revved up then, but I presented a part of me that isn't as strong a part of me really. Does that make sense? So when people find themselves in this place of disenchantment, when we start to see more of who this person really is that we are with. And oftentimes seeing what that means is seeing more of what we don't like about our partner. It can feel so disheartening. Almost like you were cheated, right? Like you can't have what you thought you had. Like you don't get to keep what you thought you had, right? You can't have what you want even, maybe. And I think this is the reason we long for those earlier times. That infatuation phase. But moving back to infatuation is not only impossible, it's not where you want to be really, right? In the illusion of love, not truly loving the full humans that you are, the real humans that you each are. I bet if you're listening to this, what you want is the real, true love, sustainable love, genuine, non-conditional love and acceptance and enjoyment of who this person is. But if you found yourself in the land of disenchantment, like so many couples are and end up staying, I want you to know I don't want you to stay there either, right? Where you're seeing mostly problems and faults with him and also with yourself. And you're feeling a lot more negative emotions than you used to. I don't want you to stay here. And the truth is, this phase of disenchantment, and this is good news, it doesn't have to be a problem. Because for one, it's very normal to find ourselves here. It's part of the process of finding our way to mature love. So it's normal to find ourselves here when we do not have the skills to move out of it, right? Or to stay out of it or circumvent it altogether, which most of us don't because we were not taught, right? And even a lot of the skills that you, or like the things that you read about relationships in our, in self-help books, in media, magazines, whatever, they're not always going to be giving you the skills that you actually need to move truly out of disenchantment and into real enchantment, right? They're not the skills necessarily. We just haven't learned the skills to keep love vibrant, right? And like I talk about a lot, finding ourselves in disenchantment is because of our human brains and their conditioning, right? Our human brains and the way that they've been conditioned, which again is a little hopeful note. Of course you can learn to work with and therefore bring yourself out of disenchantment. All right. The other reason why it doesn't have to be a problem when you're in the phase of disenchantment is it can very much be, if you use it as such, fuel to move yourself towards the next and very best phase, right? Because that lack of vibrancy, that discord, all the hard stuff that you feel in the land of disenchantment, it's often just what's needed to wake us up, to wake you up and propel you to learn what you need to learn to make your love, your marriage vibrant and lasting for the long haul. I probably told this story before, but it's a great place for this story again. When I was in yoga teacher training, I was in a big room with 50 people. And one of the first questions they asked us is something along the lines of like, how many of you, raise your hand, got here to this yoga teacher training today because of a very, very hard time in your life, because of suffering you experienced? Like 49 people raised their hands. So when we're in suffering, it's oftentimes when we hit bottom is the way they say it, like there's nowhere to go but up, right? Like we can use that moment to compel us, to motivate us to grow and change and move out of that suffering and find what we really want, have what we really want, go for what we really want. So if you are in disenchantment, let it be your wake-up call, right? You can move on through this place and not get stuck here for the rest of your life, like many people do. You can move on through this place and not even get divorced, right? I want you to move past disenchantment. I want you to use it if you're there to be like, all right, I'm gathering up my energy and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to shift things, right? So you can move past disenchantment and into the land of that more mature, evolved, deeper, genuine love. Like a deeper, more evolved, more genuine love than you've ever known before, right? And this is that land of real enchantment. It's kind of a play on words, right? Re-enchantment, real enchanted. It's enchantment. It's being enchanted with the realness of your partner's humanness. And yes, the podcast called Loving Humanness is very connected to this. It's key to love humanness. And I'll tell you a little bit more in a few minutes about what you need to know to get there. So a little bit more about this place of re-enchantment, this mature love land. This is a place that does feel reminiscent of those early days, but is no longer based on false understandings of each other, right? That's no longer coming from infatuation and ideas about one another that are falsely glorified, right? Or we're seeing the whole person and loving them with all their flaws, right? In this place, in this land, you come to know real, deep love of this person for all of who they are, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. And in this place, yes, your heart does feel full of palpable love for this person, but it's the real them, the real person, right? The guy who talks about his dreams with passion, I'm talking about my husband, but doesn't do most of them, right? The guy who doesn't love watching long hours of rom-com with you on the couch like he seemed to in the early days. Yeah. The guy who isn't so patient as he used to seem, but the guy who can get snappy with the kids or with you. Right. And here you could just think about like the things you didn't see about your partner in the beginning. And now like maybe they bother you or you just don't love them about him. Like you can love this person fully with all of these things going on. When you've moved into this phase of real enchantment, you also come to know the real love this person has for you, right? And a love that's for all of who you are, right? You see his love for you even when he isn't doing the total focus on you thing anymore, right? You see it in the smaller gestures. You feel it there. You don't ever doubt its depth. And this real enchantment land is also the place where that true lightheartedness with each other is the norm, where connection really is easy and laughter is like frequent and there are lots of jokes and smiles come easily because there's such safety and deep and like such a deep, genuine foundation of love in this place. Right? The wars that were part of life in the disenchantment phase are long gone. And peace is deep between you. And because of that, growing and stretching and choosing to bring in more love, more passion on purpose is easy and fun and totally doable. Right? This is a place that does have passion because you choose it, because you cultivate it on purpose. There's nothing in the way of you wanting to cultivate it. And in this place of real enchantment, there's a love here that frees you both up to be really just cherished for exactly who you each are. Right? So in other words, this place is a mature and joyful land of love. Right? It's a conscious love. It's an amazing, deep human love. And in this place, there is this re-enchantment, like a new enchantment that you feel for your partner, for his humanness, for his realness. And if you want a deeper description of all of this and like what this place is like, I want you to go ahead and listen to, if you haven't already, or you could even re-listen to it, the podcast episode, The Amazing Human Marriage, which is episode 64. I do want to say, though, that I keep calling this place a phase, but it's not a phase. This is the end goal, right? The land you want to be in, the place you want to get to in your marriage. And now listen, this is definitely not the land of effortlessness, though, right? This is the land where growth or conscious effort are always part of the deal. Just like having a home, right? You need to mow the lawn and clean the house and take out the trash and who knows, like redo the roof, right? Maintenance and care and intention and attention are required. And ideally in that end goal place, you're both putting that in. Now, sometimes along the way, one or the other of you won't do as much. And what I love about the work that I do is I know deeply, I witness all the time that one person, and usually it's the woman in the marriage when they work with me. Not always, though. I have men who come to me too, who can take the lead and caretake their relationship to this place, right? And as the first partner starts to, the other person eventually gets swept up in that momentum, right? Because you create that environment where that other person wants to contribute more. And I've had so much fun beginning to bring more partners on board. But I always start off with the woman first, or the one person, the one partner first. And then as we go along together, we consciously, if they and their partner choose to, we bring in their partner to the coaching and move together towards this land of real enchantment, towards this mature love. And I tell you, it's amazing and so powerful when both partners are doing the work. But it's also amazing and so powerful when just one person is doing that work. How much things shift, how quickly you move out of disenchantment and into the land of real enchantment. All right, so I want to share just a little bit about what does it take to move out of disenchantment. So, and of course, a lot of this is what I do with clients, and a lot of what I've shared on the podcast is about this, right? That's what this podcast truly is all about. Most of what I'm talking about on this podcast is moving you out of disenchantment. So I do want to say for each person, it's slightly different, but it will always entail, I'm just going to list a bunch of things. It's going to entail effort. It's going to entail learning and unlearning old unhelpful patterns of thinking and perceiving and believing and relating to ourselves and each other, right? It's going to require not waiting for our partner to go first, for your partner to go first. It's going to require not simply wishing that things will change. It means being the agent of change, leading love, examining all the barriers in you to having that love. It means seeing those barriers, which again are thoughts and perceptions and ways of relating to things outside of us, like our partner, and inside of us, like ourselves and our thoughts and our feelings, right? And it's loosening the grip, melting those barriers away. It's communicating from authenticity and love, which requires the work I just shared already. Communicating without demand. It requires deep acceptance of and compassion for humanness. It means learning how to work with your brain, right? Like I was just saying, and your mind, body, heart system, right? I mean, your nervous system, your sensitivity, your unique mind, body, heart system. It might mean setting boundaries and letting go and stopping the backfiring tactics that I talk a lot about. It means insourcing your self-worth and love, insourcing love and comfort and the other feelings that you want to be having. Right? Even attraction, we can insource that. It's not just our partner that creates attraction for us. Oh, no. We are very much in charge of our attraction. We just need to learn how to be in charge of that. Most of us haven't been taught. We haven't been taught how to be in charge of our emotions, right? So it requires all the things that allow us to become a graceful steward of our emotions, the agent of our own emotions, right? And another really big piece is learning to love without conditions. Learning to truly love both yourself and your partner. And again, that has to do with loving our very humanness. All of it. Now, I do want to say that doesn't have to sound, if that sounds overwhelming and like a ton, I break it down into simple steps when I work with people. And I don't want you to feel like hear all that list of things and be like, oh my God, that's too much, right? It might be helpful if you're like, oh, that's a lot, to just consider it like, well, one of these little pieces at a time, or one of these little pieces at a time is enough to get started. And all of the podcasts offer at least one little piece in each podcast. And I also talk about it in a recent episode called The 4 Steps to an Amazing Marriage. That talks about this is a more simplified way, which is how I actually work with clients on this. I make it very simple and very doable with very simple tools. I don't give the tools in that episode, but I do talk about sort of the generalized simple structure that I will work with people on and walk people through. All right. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And I do want to offer that, like, just to be truly honest about all of this, like, we're not talking fairy tale land, this land of real enchantment. And because the truth is, like, as humans, things aren't always we don't walk such straight lines, right? They're not always so cut and dry. So we don't necessarily arrive in this real enchantment place forever in an unwavering state of mature love, right? As humans, we may waver back into the moments of disenchantment, moments of egoic wanting or neediness, as Tolle says, because we have human brains and nervous systems. And there are times when things come up in life that can make it harder to guide ourselves or stay in this place of mature love. Right? But as we learn to be sovereign agents of our own emotions, of our own love, we can steward ourselves back to mature re-enchantment, real enchantment, deep human love. Right? We can always trust ourselves to bring ourselves back there fairly quickly if we find ourselves back in disenchantment for a moment. Right? And we can, for the most part, learn to stay there eventually and truly bask in the joy and the love and the incredible support and security that's always available there. So, if you've been thinking about wanting to return to the early days, or you're like, I need to just get out of this relationship because I'm in disenchantment, I suggest you move on through disenchantment, you work on through it, and you move into the days of having a truly amazing marriage. That land of real enchantment, that land of sustainable, lasting, mature, deep human love. You know I am here to help you do that thoroughly when you coach with me, or when you and your partner coach with me. Either way. So do not hesitate to reach out. You can find more over at www.lifeisworthloving.com, where you can also jump on my email list if you're not on it. You'll get more little tidbits to help walk you towards out of the land of disenchantment and towards this land where you really want to be in your marriage. You'll get tidbits every week alongside this podcast. So you'll have lots of things supporting you move in that direction. But if you truly want to ensure that you get there and you stay there, absolutely come coach with me. I'd be honored to help you get there. All right, my friend, I hope you have a wonderful day and be oh so well.